America, this is the Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, online at freedomchamber.net, the pro-American business network. One of the biggest weights around business owners' necks are healthcare insurance costs. Well, the Freedom Chamber has a solution. Dive in there right now at freedomchamber.net and find out how you can save money on your premiums while not giving up your healthcare standards. The Guardianship Program inside the Freedom Chamber, online at freedomchamber.net. It's Rod Martin, it's Dean Owen, I'm Chuck Barham, and gents, we've got a lot to cover today. As we just said off air, it seems like the world is on fire, and literally in some parts of the world it is on fire. Let's talk with Rod Martin first about what's going on in Venezuela, Iran, and the Supreme Court possibly overturning the fact that we may have to give back our tariff money. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Rod, your thoughts?
Well, with regard to Iran, as you know, the Iranian regime has murdered thousands of its own people in the last few days. The president's been very clear that we're going to do something consequential about that. He has not, as of when we're taping this, said what that is. But I think that anybody who's been paying attention should know that if Donald Trump says he's going to do something, it's going to happen and it's going to matter. So there's that. I think the Iranian regime is under a lot more pressure than it might be because of Venezuela. Our disruption of the shadow fleet that is only very small percentage of that shadow fleet at present, but it's really meaningful. It dramatically changes the insurance picture for those tankers. It dramatically changes the risk profile for the companies purchasing and shipping that oil, not to mention the governments that are. And those are primarily Cuba, China, Iran. Now, and again, you wouldn't think Iran's not purchasing from Venezuela per se, but they're using the same tanker fleet. Cuba isn't purchasing per se, but Cuba is being subsidized by it. That is not only how they get all of their fuel, it's also how they resell a lot of Venezuelan crude, primarily to China, for the purpose of raising the hard currency they otherwise can't get because they are a socialist hellhole. And then there's China. And China is consuming 90% of Iran's oil, a big percentage of Venezuela's, and a big percentage of Russia's. Without the shadow fleet, all of these governments are in trouble. Cuba's toast. They really don't have a lot of run room at this point. Russia isn't going to be able to finance the war if the shadow fleet really is offline, and Trump seems intent on that. You already see revolution in Iran. This is part of why. And it's just yet another instance where Donald Trump does one short, sharp application of U.S. power that reverberates across the world.
Do you see, I saw his post on Truth Social about Cuba. Now's the time to make a deal before it's too late. I mean, you take that for every word and every sentence that he wrote, and you better take it to heart. Where does that, everybody will go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis and Russia and China and Iran. I think Venezuela just kind of pulled the plug on all of that, because without that oil, without that commerce, without that dark money coming through, they don't really have anything to stand on other than what? Nothing, right?
Well, Scott Adams died today, which is so sad. And
yes.
I hope he was saved. He said he was at the end, but he said some things that make you question that. Scott used to talk about people being word thinkers. And what he meant by that was they knew words, they knew terms, and they knew how to string them together where they sounded smart, but they really didn't know anything. If somebody is talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis in the context of 21st century Cuba, they are nothing but a word thinker. They are just stringing together things they do not understand. There are no nuclear missiles in Cuba, and there's no threat to CONUS, the continental United States, from any such missiles, and the Russians aren't going to station them there. And the need to do so is obsolete by more than half a century. It's just nonsense. And the truth is, how is Russia going to get to Havana or to Miami when it can't get to Kiev? And this is the thing that all of the neocons just keep missing. They act like we're dealing with the Soviet Union. We're not. We're dealing with a tiny fraction of what used to be, with a tiny fraction of the economy and military it used to have.
Amen to that, Rod Martin. Amen. Dean Martin, or Dean Owen, not Dean Martin. No Rat Pack here, guys. Dean Owen, your thoughts. I can't believe that's the first time I've ever done that with your last name, Martin, and Dean's thing. So go ahead, Mr. Sinatra, your thoughts.
If that's the biggest gift we have today, we'll have a good day.
Amen.
I can't possibly disagree with Rod. Everything he said is important, but there's another twist to it. China's going to have to buy oil. And if we're selling it to them, that changes the whole dynamics about rare earths. It changes a lot of things. And if they're depending on us for oil, I think they're going to figure out a way to be a more friendly posture.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
We say it time and time again. This president does not add; he multiplies at high speed. He's doing geometry, but everyone else is doing that arithmetic. So you look at all of these wins together. As far as Cuba goes, man, the guy Hugo Chavez, he was told to be given a very good offer, and very good offer. And they was told, if you don't take it, here's what's going to happen. Bad things are going to happen to you. So I gotta think that the people in Cuba are listening to that and watching that, and they're seeing him do what he does, which is commerce, not chaos. Let's figure out a way for everyone to be better off economically and get along, or here's the stick we're going to beat you to death with. I think that's exactly what's going on right now. It's the same playbook we have seen him do time and time and time again.
Absolutely it is. And that just brings into play, it dovetails right into the next topic, and that's tariffs. With the Supreme Court hearing arguments as we're taping this, and possibly earlier today, about maybe having to pay all that money back, it being unconstitutional. How does the Supreme Court even have the authority, Rod, to even get their fingers into this situation?
Well, Congress clearly has the power to levy taxes, and nobody else does, although we've been fudging on that for 90 years, allowing various independent agencies to do things that are effectively taxation, so without congressional approval. So, this is a gray area in practice, but in the Constitution, if a tariff is a tax, which every libertarian says, just religiously, then only Congress can levy a tariff. The problem with that is that historically the Supreme Court has treated tariffs as fees. And this came up in the context of the oral arguments here. You had a couple of justices question the plaintiffs, saying, look, what you're saying means that Donald Trump could literally shut off all trade from China, but he can't levy a 1% tariff against them. And the plaintiff's attorney said, yes, that's correct. Okay, so he could charge them $100,000 fee on a stuffed bear they ship over to Toys R Us, and that would be okay, but he can't charge a $1 tariff. Yes, that's right. I think the Supreme Court comes down for the Trump administration, and even if they don't, they're going to have to address the fact that Congress has given the president an incredible amount of latitude to levy tariffs through other legislation. And if this is unconstitutional, that is unconstitutional. That's been the law since the 30s. there's no obvious reason for it to change. And I don't believe there's a good constitutional reason to do so, despite the religious dogma that tariffs are a tax. They really, historically and legally, aren't.
That is a very precise answer. Thank you, Rod. That is that right there should be a Mike, producer Mike. We need to take that and clip that and ship that out to every member of Congress, the Supreme Court, anybody that's an elected official, and let them know that's how this needs to happen. Dean Owen, your thoughts on that? Great job, Rod.
Obviously, this you got to go back to this president is a businessman first. Obviously, he's a politician, but I think he's a politician second. He's looking at tariffs as a revenue source first, and then a national security issue. Because if we can arrange our affairs with tariffs to bring China to be a little bit more friendly, bring some of these other countries to be more friendly, that is a national defense, national security issue. And it's not just revenue, it's national security. And who is in charge of our national security? The commander in chief. So I think again go right along with Rod. I think the Supreme Court's going to come down on this side. And if they do say that they can't do that, then of course I'm an investment advisor. I have an investment advisor license. There's a government entity that's charging me a tariff, which is a tax. And then only Congress can do that. So if it's a fee, and we've allowed fees for so long, I paid God off of licensing fees, all kinds of bodies, that then all that whole system of self-governance starts to fall apart. And that would be taken to case law.
Absolutely. As we wrap up this segment and the show, guys, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your insight. Rod and Dean, you guys have been spot on. We talked about consumer goods and products. They came in lower than what the experts said they were going to come in at, which just means that the economy's humming. Inflation is starting to get really wrangled in. If we could just get the Fed to do what they need to do with interest rates, do you see that happening anytime soon, Rod, in the late Q1, first part of Q2?
I think so. Right now we've had a kink thrown into it because we now have a criminal investigation of the chairman of the Fed for his misuse of funds in the renovation of the Federal Reserve building. And I know even Fox is going on about how, oh, this is a huge political defeat for Donald Trump. Really? Because Jerome Powell is actually going to have to answer questions. He may have to stand trial. I don't see how this is a defeat for Trump. Now, you can say that somebody's going to be upset about it because of the independence of the Fed. I don't think that's what happens. I think Powell may be in a position where he needs to resign. If he doesn't resign, he's definitely in a position where his time is going to be constrained by the fact of this investigation. And there's just no way for Trump to lose. Normal people do not care if Donald Trump goes after waste and fraud at the Federal Reserve.
I go back to the press conference where Donald J. Trump, our beautiful president, was walking the halls of the Federal Reserve, and he had everybody in tow, and it looked like kids that were getting ready to go to the principal's office or out back to the woodshed because they knew it was up. They knew that he was bringing the hammer down. They just didn't know when, and I believe the hammer has been brought. How much money? It's $400. Is that what we're up to? $400 million for that renovation? Is that the latest number I've heard?
The latest number I heard was $3 billion.
I'm sorry. 4 billion is what I heard.
Yeah.
Was that right? 4 billion is what it was going to take to renovate the Federal Reserve building, which I just can't believe that. I mean, that looks like Somalian money being pushed their way. In a way, I mean, that's an NGO on the backside of the Federal Reserve, and I'm glad that Donald Trump is doing what he's doing. I'm glad that Nick Shirley is doing what he's doing in Minneapolis. There should be some more videos dropping today about some other deals that have been cut, and the $700 million they found at the Minneapolis airport. It's all starting to unravel as we get into 2026 here. And I think the Federal Reserve is just a part of it, just another way of milking the taxpayer out of money while feeding the hands of people that have been under the table for years that are used to it. And Dean, I welcome your thoughts.
Yeah, the world is going to change because we're going to stop funding all this garbage and this anti-American. We're funding our enemies with taxpayers' dollars. Yeah, and Elon Musk, I dare not cross him, says 10% of the federal budget is waste, fraud, abuse. And they find it 10%. That is a huge number. And what does a business owner do when he's running a business and is failing financially? He raises his revenue and he cuts costs. So what did Donald Trump do? Gold visas, tariffs, oil tankers. That's raising revenue at big numbers. And what's he doing with the fraud? Cutting costs. This is what business people do. Politicians don't think this way. So we're in good hands. God bless him, and God, awful glad he's there.
Absolutely. Dean, where can people find you online, bud?
OwenCPA.com. Jump online, connect with my team. Let us show you how to disinherit the government and not your kids.
Absolutely. The Martin Report. Rod Martin, where can we find it?
We're at rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org. We have tens of thousands of subscribers who read our daily long-form geopolitical analysis that Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. If you really want to understand how the world fits together, come to rodmartin.org. We've got almost 300,000 followers on X, too. There's a reason.
Absolutely. Delivered to my phone every morning. It seems I believe the topic today was Venezuela inside the Martin Report, if I do remember correctly from this morning.
Venezuela this afternoon. We have a webinar on that. And this morning, you got a fascinating article on the 10-year anniversary of the end of China's one-child policy.
Yes.
And just the catastrophe that is unfolding as a result. Not
Absolutely.
of ending it, but of having it in the first place.
The Martin Report.
Yeah,
Subscribe for it. Go ahead, Dean.
I said I have to plug in too. I'm CPA, Master's Degree Tax, Graduate Tax School. Rod's got one of the best tax guides on his website. We'll pull it down. Good stuff.
That's why we do this. That's why we created the Freedom Chamber. That's why we do the Business Pulse. If you haven't joined the Freedom Chamber, make sure you do so. Find it online at freedomchamber.net. If you're in here right now watching it, you're a member. Find another 10 people to join us. Strengthen numbers, freedomchamber.net. Freedom Chamber, the pro-American business network. And gentlemen, appreciate all that you do. And this has been the Business Pulse.
My name is Dean Owen. I'm a CPA. I have a master's degree in taxation and a personal financial specialist. Tax laws are always changing. That's why you need a tax strategist, not just a tax preparer. You need someone to help you pay the least amount of tax legally. Because if your business and retirement tax planning is not tax smart, it's probably tax dumb. Let's fix that today. Call me. Let's disinherit the government and not your kids. That's what my team and I do. This is who we are. I'm a combat veteran, unapologetically American, unapologetically pro-God, pro-life, and pro-Second Amendment. If those are the values you seek in a tax and money advisor, call us. Again, let's disinherit the government and not your kids. We're not afraid to share our values, and we share them with you.